Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening.
Jason maneuvered through the crowded lanes of the spaceport with practiced ease. The air was a cacophony of alien dialects, the sharp scent of exotic spices mingling with the metallic tang of spacecraft fuel. He pulled his cargo behind him, a sealed container filled with rare Earth artifacts bound for distant collectors. As he approached a bustling marketplace, a sudden commotion caught his attention. A small crowd had gathered around a stall, their voices raised in a mixture of curiosity and alarm. Jason edged closer, curious despite himself. At the center of the crowd stood an alien girl, her skin a shimmering blue, eyes wide and bright. She was pointing directly at him, her voice clear and resonant even amidst the noise. "Mine, all mine," she exclaimed, her gaze locked onto Jason. The crowd parted slightly as Jason, puzzled, stepped forward. "Sorry, what's yours?" The alien, who introduced herself as Mrali, didn't waver. "You are. I have not seen your like before. You must be one of the rare humans." Her tone was a mix of wonder and assertive possession. Jason chuckled, unsure how to respond. "Well, I'm not exactly anyone's to claim. Name's Jason. And you are?" "Mrali, as I said. I am from Yaltrix. You will stay with me. I will show you our ways." She grabbed his hand with a surprising strength, her touch cool and smooth. "Hold on. Slow down a minute," Jason said, gently withdrawing his hand. He noticed another human, a bit older, approaching them with an amused look. "First time at the Yaltrix spaceport? Huh?" The newcomer remarked, extending a hand. "Name's Harris. I've been here a few years. Mrali here is known for being, let's say, enthusiastically hospitable." Jason shook Harris's hand, grateful for a familiar face. "Jason? Yeah, it's my first time. Didn't expect to be claimed like luggage." Mrali seemed undeterred. "It is our way. When we find something, or someone of value, we keep them close." "You are valuable, Jason," Harris laughed, clapping Jason on the back. "Well, you're in for an interesting time. Let me give you some advice. The Yaltrixians are intense, but they mean well. Stick close to Mrali if you want to avoid the less friendly types around here." Mrali smiled, pleased. "See? Harris understands. Now, let me show you both something special. You will like it, I promise." Curious despite his reservations, Jason followed Mrali as she led them through a series of narrow alleys to a less crowded area. The buildings here were taller, covered in luminescent panels that cast a soft glow over the streets. "So, Mrali, you just bring all strangers here?" Jason asked, trying to strike a balance between his discomfort and his intrigue. "Not all. Only the interesting ones." She stopped in front of a tall building adorned with flowing alien script. "Here. This is where I wanted to bring you." Inside, the building opened up into a vast gallery filled with extraordinary items from all over the galaxy. Mrali's enthusiasm was contagious as she explained the origins of each piece, her knowledge extensive. As they walked, Jason found himself relaxing. The initial shock of her claim seemed less alarming now in the context of her culture and her obvious desire to share it with him. "Okay, Mrali," Jason finally said, smiling, "lead the way. Let's see what else you can show me." Mrali beamed, delighted. "You will not regret this, Jason. I will make sure of it." As the trio delved deeper into the gallery, Jason's apprehension faded, replaced by a budding curiosity about this vibrant culture and the enthusiastic alien girl who was so eager to share it with him. The morning light filtered through the vibrant, stained glass of Mrali's city as Jason and Harris followed her through the bustling market streets. The air was alive with the buzz of alien dialects and the rich aroma of unfamiliar spices. "So, Mrali, this market sells just about everything?" Jason asked, his eyes wide as they passed a stall displaying luminous fruits. "Everything you can imagine, and even things you cannot," Mrali replied, her eyes twinkling. She picked up a fruit that seemed to pulse with light. "This is a cave air fruit. It reacts to touch. See?" She handed it to Jason, who tentatively poked it, watching in awe as it glowed brighter. Harris chuckled, shaking his head. "First time I tried one of those, I thought it was going to explode." Morali laughed, a clear, ringing sound. Many do. Here, let me show you what else we have. She led them to another stall, this one filled with intricate gadgets and tools. Yaltric's technology is quite advanced. We value innovation. As Jason examined a device that appeared to manipulate gravity, Harris leaned in and whispered, "Watch out, the tech can be tricky. I nearly got stuck to the ceiling once." Jason raised an eyebrow but grinned. "Thanks for the heads up, Harris." Turning to Morali, he asked, "How do you figure out all this stuff?" Morali's expression was proud. "We grow up with it, just like you humans with your, what do you call them? Smartphones?" "Right," Jason laughed. "Though I think this stuff is a bit beyond smartphones." Their next stop was a clothing vendor, where garments of all shapes and sizes hung in vibrant displays. Morali insisted on them trying some traditional Yaltrixian garments. Harris obliged, choosing a deep red tunic, while Jason hesitated before selecting a more subdued blue one. As they changed, Harris whispered, "You get used to the clothes. They're actually quite comfortable." Jason adjusted the fabric, surprised at its lightness and fit. "Not bad at all," he admitted, looking at his reflection. "See? You look more Yaltrixian already," Morali exclaimed. "Now, let's get some food. You must be hungry." The food court was a sensory overload, with vendors offering dishes from all corners of Yaltrix. Morali guided them to her favorite stall, where a friendly vendor dished out plates of something that looked like steaming purple noodles. "It's made from the fibrous roots of mura plants," Morali explained. "Very nutritious." Jason tried a forkful, pleasantly surprised by the tangy flavor. "This is really good. What's the spice?" "That's Zinter. It's mild but adds a depth, doesn't it?" Morali seemed pleased with his reaction. As they ate, Jason observed the flow of the crowd, noting the diversity. "Morali, people here seem from all walks of life." "Yes, Yaltrix is a hub for many species. We pride ourselves on diversity. You'll find peace and conflict, all in one place." Harris nodded. "It's a melting pot, all right. Keeps things interesting." After their meal, they continued their tour, visiting a park that boasted floating gardens. "Gravity manipulation," Morali pointed out as they walked beneath hovering beds of flowers. Jason was silent for a moment, taking it all in. "Morali, thanks for showing us around. It's not every day you get a tour from someone who knows their city inside out." Morali smiled, her hand brushing against Jason's arm briefly. "I'm glad to share it with you. And remember, you're mine to show around." Jason laughed, the initial shock of her claim now a running joke among them. "I'll keep that in mind." The day ended with the setting of Yaltrix's twin suns, casting a golden glow over the city. As they headed back to the spaceport, Jason felt a newfound appreciation for the alien world, brought closer to understanding by Morali's enthusiastic guidance and Harris's camaraderie. The evening had set in with a cool breeze wafting through the open windows of Morali's home. The walls were adorned with glowing art pieces, each telling a story of Yaltrix's rich history. Jason and Harris had been invited for dinner, a gesture that Jason interpreted as a sign of deepening trust and friendship in Yaltrixian culture. As they entered, Harris gave Jason a nudge. "Prepare yourself for a real feast. Morali's cooking is legendary around here." Morali, overhearing this, laughed from the kitchen. "I hope it lives up to your expectations, Harris." "Jason, come. Let me show you how we prepare Velix stew. It's a traditional dish." Jason followed her to the kitchen, intrigued by the array of exotic ingredients spread out on the counter. "What can I do to help?" he asked. "Here, you can start by mixing these." Morali handed him a bowl filled with colorful spices. "Just mix them slowly while I chop the Velix root." As they cooked, Morali explained each step, her hands deftly moving from one task to another. "The key is in the spices. They must be added at precisely the right moment to enhance the flavors properly." Jason, trying his best to keep up, smiled. "It's a lot like chemistry, isn't it?" "Exactly." Morali grinned. "Cooking is chemistry for the soul." Meanwhile, Harris was setting the table, arranging the utensils in a peculiar, yet precise order. "Yaltrixian dining etiquette is quite the ballet," he remarked. Jason joined him after a while, helping to place the last few items. I'm still getting the hang of all these customs. It's all about the experience, my friend, Harris said. Dining here is a communal affair, meant to build connections and understanding. As they sat down to eat, Morali served the stew, which was met with appreciative murmurs from Harris and a nod of approval from Jason, who was quickly acquiring a taste for the local cuisine. So, Jason, Morali began as they started eating. What do you think of our little planet so far? Jason chewed thoughtfully before answering. It's fascinating. There's a richness to your culture that's quite overwhelming, in a good way. And the food's not bad either, he added with a chuckle. Morali beamed. I'm glad you like it. Yaltrix has much to offer, especially to those who are open to it. The conversation drifted to various topics, from the intricacies of interstellar trade to tales of Harris's earlier adventures on other planets. Jason listened, fascinated by the stories and the easy camaraderie that had formed between them. After dinner, Morali suggested a walk in the nearby garden to enjoy the night's twin moons. The garden was a tranquil space, with luminescent plants that lit their path in soft blues and greens. It's beautiful here, Jason remarked, looking around at the glowing flora. Morali nodded, her expression thoughtful. It's one of my favorite places. It reminds me that there's beauty in tranquility. They walked in comfortable silence for a few moments before Harris spoke up. You know, Jason, places like these are perfect for clearing your head. Good for reflection. Jason agreed. It's peaceful. Back on Earth, places like this are becoming rare. Morali stopped and turned to them. Then you must come here more often. Consider it yours as well whenever you wish to escape. Thanks, Morali. That means a lot, Jason replied, genuinely touched. As they headed back to the house, the night deepened, and the twin moons cast long shadows over the garden. Jason felt a sense of contentment, a feeling of being at home among the stars, far from Earth yet strangely connected to this alien world through friendship and shared moments. The night ended with promises to explore more of Yaltrix together, a plan that Jason looked forward to with eager anticipation. The morning was bright, the sunlight casting a warm glow over the city as Jason and Harris accompanied Morali to one of Yaltrix's renowned cultural centers. The building was an architectural marvel, with sweeping curves and vibrant colors that seemed to change when viewed from different angles. As they entered, Morali pointed out various exhibits, her voice filled with pride. This center is a testament to our artistic achievements and historical discoveries. Each section tells a part of our story. Harris, who had visited the center numerous times, nodded in agreement. Every time I come here, there's something new to discover. You've got a rich history, Morali. Morali smiled. Thank you, Harris. I'm glad you appreciate it. Jason, over here, we have artifacts from the early Yaltrixian eras. They might look primitive, but they were revolutionary at the time. Jason examined the artifacts closely, intrigued by the craftsmanship. This is amazing. On Earth, we have museums too, but seeing something so alien yet so familiar is quite something. As they moved to a section dedicated to contemporary art, Morali introduced them to a local artist who was displaying his work that day. The artist, a tall, thin creature with a multitude of eyes, greeted them warmly. Welcome, welcome, the artist exclaimed. Morali tells me we have a visitor from Earth. How do my pieces speak to you? Jason studied the vivid, pulsating paintings, each depicting different aspects of Yaltrixian life. They're incredible. There's a lot of emotion captured in these colors. The artist beamed, his eyes blinking asynchronously. Ah, that is exactly what I aim for. Art should evoke feelings, connect across cultures. They spent a few more minutes discussing art and its universal language before moving on to a workshop area where visitors could try their hand at traditional Yaltrixian crafting techniques. Harris chuckled as he picked up a sculpting tool. All right, let's see if I've gotten any better at this. Morali laughed. I remember your last creation. It was interesting. Jason joined in, attempting to mold a piece of soft, clay-like material. What do you think this will be? He joked as the material squirmed in his hands. I think you're making a new form of art, Jason, Harris quipped. Abstract, very abstract. Their laughter filled the workshop, drawing smiles from other visitors. Morali showed them a more effective technique, guiding Jason's hands with her own. The warmth of her touch was distracting, causing him to fumble the material again, much to their amusement. After the workshop, they enjoyed a light meal at the center's cafe, discussing their favorite parts of the visit. Jason felt a deeper connection to Yaltrix, his understanding enriched by Morali's explanations and Harris's anecdotes. "So, what's next on the cultural agenda?" Jason asked, eager to learn more. Morali thought for a moment. "How about a visit to the Grand Library? It's not far from here. They have texts and recordings from nearly every civilization in this sector." Harris nodded enthusiastically. "You'll love it, Jason. It's a treasure trove for anyone interested in history and science." As they left the cultural center, the trio shared a sense of camaraderie. Jason appreciated the growing bond between them, fostered by shared experiences and mutual curiosity about each other's worlds. The streets were busy with the afternoon rush as they made their way to the library. Jason was lost in thought, reflecting on the day's events, grateful for the friendships he was building in this strange new world. The alien city no longer felt quite so alien, and he looked forward to each new day with a sense of wonder and excitement. As dusk settled over the city, casting its purples and blues across the skyline, Jason, Morali, and Harris found themselves climbing the gentle slopes of a nearby hill, a popular spot for watching the triple moons rise. The path was softly lit by bioluminescent plants that edged the trail, each step releasing a faint, soothing glow. Jason breathed deeply, enjoying the crisp air. "I don't think I'll ever get used to how beautiful it is here," he said, looking over at Morali, who was leading the way. "It's one of my favorite places to come and think," Morali replied, "especially on clear nights like this. The moons are not just celestial bodies here. They are cultural symbols, representing different aspects of our philosophy and life." Harris, carrying a small pack with refreshments, chimed in, "Yeah, and it's a great spot for some good old stargazing. Wait until you see the view from the top, Jason. It's breathtaking." They reached the summit just as the first moon began its ascent, its light silvery and cool. The trio found a comfortable spot to sit, and Harris unpacked some local snacks and a warm, spiced beverage he had insisted they try. As they settled down, Morali turned to Jason, her expression more serious than before. "Jason, I wanted to talk to you about something important." Jason set down his drink, giving her his full attention. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Morali hesitated, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her garment. "I know my earlier declaration in the market took you off guard. I said you were mine, and I realize how that must sound to human ears." Jason smiled gently, trying to ease her discomfort. "I understand it's part of your culture, Morali. It was surprising, but I know you didn't mean anything bad by it." "It's more than culture," Morali continued, looking up at the moons. "It's also how I feel. I find myself drawn to you in a way that I didn't anticipate." She was interrupted by Harris, who, realizing the gravity of the conversation, quickly excused himself. "I'll just go check on the north side for a better view of the moons." "Take your time, you two." Once Harris had left, Morali took a deep breath. "I feel a connection with you, Jason, and I want to explore that if you're willing." Jason's heart raced, his previous encounters with Morali flashing through his mind. He had felt the pull too, a strange and wonderful attraction that was hard to ignore. "Morali, I've been feeling the same way. I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to mention it." Morali's face lit up, the moonlight accentuating her features. "Really? I'm so relieved to hear that. I didn't want to presume." "No, it's good. I'm glad you brought it up," Jason said, his voice warm. "I'd like to see where this could go between us." They spent a few moments in silence, just looking at each other and then up at the sky, letting the significance of their conversation sink in. Finally, Morali reached out to take Jason's hand, her touch gentle but firm. "Then let's promise to explore this together, slowly and respectfully," she said softly. "I'd like that," Jason replied, squeezing her hand. They spent the rest of the evening talking about their hopes and expectations, each opening up about their fears and desires. The moons climbed higher, casting their trio of lights over the two figures sitting close together, a human and an alien, connected by new, tender feelings amidst the vast, starlit sky. A few weeks had passed since Jason and Morali shared their feelings under the light of the three moons. Their bond had only deepened since then, but not everyone around them was as open to their relationship. Subtle glances, murmurs in the streets, and even hesitant remarks from some of Morali's friends started to weigh on them, bringing attention neither had expected. Jason leaned against the railing of Morali's balcony one evening, looking out at the glowing city below. Harris joined him, handing him a drink with a sympathetic look. "Rough day?" Harris asked. Jason sighed. "You could say that. Feels like every time we go out, there's some new challenge or odd look. And it's starting to get to Morali. She tries to brush it off, but I can see it bothers her." Harris nodded, sipping his drink. Yeltricians are passionate people, but they're also a bit protective of their own. They may not understand why one of their own would fall for someone so different. Just then, Morali stepped out onto the balcony, looking between the two men with a worried expression. "I could hear you talking. I don't want you two to think this is a mistake. I chose Jason." Jason turned to her, a reassuring smile on his face. "Hey, I'm not going anywhere. We'll get through this, whatever this is." Morali looked relieved, but her frustration was still apparent. "I just don't understand why some of them think it's wrong. They've welcomed so many other species, but this relationship seems to push boundaries they aren't comfortable with." Harris chimed in. "It's because they know you, Morali. People sometimes react strongly to what feels personal. Maybe they think you're stepping away from tradition." Jason reached out, taking Morali's hand. "We'll face it together, no matter what. I didn't come all the way across the galaxy just to be put off by a few judgmental stares." She held his gaze, a slight smile returning to her face. "You're right. I suppose I shouldn't let it bother me so much. It's just hard to see people I've known my whole life look at me like I'm doing something wrong." Jason pulled her into a gentle hug, murmuring, "You're not doing anything wrong. And anyone who really cares about you will see that in time." Harris cleared his throat, a playful smirk on his face. "All right, you two lovebirds, I think I'll leave you to it. But if you need backup, you know where to find me." Jason laughed, giving Harris a grateful nod. "Thanks, man. I mean it." As Harris headed back inside, Jason and Morali stayed on the balcony, wrapped in a comfortable silence. The city lights below sparkled, and the weight of their challenges seemed to lift, even if just for a moment. Morali whispered, "Thank you for being here, Jason." "For staying." Jason brushed a strand of hair from her face, smiling. "I wouldn't be anywhere else." The tension between Jason and Morali hadn't entirely disappeared. After weeks of stares and whispers, the strain had finally led to a heated argument earlier in the day. They'd exchanged harsh words, each feeling frustrated and misunderstood. Now, as night fell, Jason found himself pacing in his small apartment, regretting the distance that had grown between them. Just as he was considering reaching out, a soft chime echoed through the room, signaling someone at his door. He opened it to find Morali standing there, looking vulnerable yet determined. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. Jason nodded, stepping aside. "Of course." They stood in silence for a moment before Morali broke it, her voice soft but steady. "I don't want us to drift apart, Jason. I'm sorry for how I acted. It's just, this isn't easy for me either." Jason sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know, Morali. I didn't mean to make it sound like you weren't trying. Sometimes it feels like I'm the reason you're dealing with all this pressure." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with an earnest intensity. "You're not the reason. You're the reason I want to face it. But I need you to understand that it's hard for me to break from the people I've known my whole life. When they look at me like I'm making a mistake, it hurts." Jason stepped closer, his expression softening. "I understand. Really, I do. But I don't want you to feel like you have to choose between me and your people." Morali took a deep breath, reaching out to take his hand. "Then let's not let anyone else come between us. We decide what this is, not them." A warmth spread through Jason as he squeezed her hand. "Agreed. From now on, we face things together, no more letting anyone's judgment affect us." They shared a quiet smile, the tension between them melting away. Jason reached out, gently brushing his fingers along her cheek, and Morali leaned into his touch, closing her eyes for a moment. "Stay tonight," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jason hesitated only a second before nodding. "I'd like that." As they moved closer, Morali slid her arms around his neck, their foreheads touching. Jason felt her breath warm against his skin, her presence calming. Slowly, they drew closer, their lips meeting in a soft, tentative kiss that quickly grew deeper, carrying the weight of everything they hadn't been able to say. They spent the evening wrapped in each other's presence, exploring the connection they'd been building for so long. Words weren't necessary now. They simply let the closeness speak for itself, bridging any distance that had come between them. Much later, as they lay together in the quiet of the room, Morali whispered, "Thank you, Jason, for staying, for being mine." Jason smiled, pulling her close. "Yours, all yours," he murmured, feeling contentment settle over them both. In that moment, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they'd face them together, secure in the bond they shared. The following morning, Jason and Morali walked hand in hand through the city's vibrant center, moving with a sense of quiet unity that felt stronger than before. They talked long into the night, laying bare their hopes, fears, and a shared determination to face the future together. As they approached a new settlement on the edge of Yaltrix, a community where various species coexisted more freely, Morali gestured toward the bustling streets. "This place is different. People here are used to seeing relationships that cross cultures. I think we could find peace here." Jason nodded, observing the mix of beings strolling by, each one unique but unbothered by differences. "Feels like a place where we could be ourselves." They wandered through the open markets, browsing shops and cafes. Jason spotted Harris among a group of familiar faces and waved him over. "Look who finally made it here," Harris teased, giving Jason a playful nudge. "I knew you two would find your way." Morali smiled, taking Jason's hand. "We needed this. A place that feels like a fresh start." Harris nodded, approving. "It's a good choice. Trust me, people here don't care about boundaries. You two will fit right in." They spent the day exploring the settlement, taking comfort in the relaxed atmosphere. Later, as the sun began to set, Jason turned to Morali, his expression warm. "This feels right, doesn't it? Like we're exactly where we should be." Morali leaned into him, her voice soft. "It does. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here, with you." They watched as the city lights flickered to life around them, casting a warm glow over the streets. For the first time in weeks, they felt truly at ease, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, together.